going to talk to us today around pelvic and perinatal health. And again, I've heard Niki talk, so which is why we encourage her to come today. She's got a fantastic session for you. And again, if you want to keep popping your questions in the chat, if there is time at the end, Niki will facilitate that. But if not, we will get back to everybody with responses. So Niki, without further ado, thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that was a really interesting chat by Joanna. I loved it. So thank you to everyone for your time today. As a way of introducing myself, I'm Niki Hurst, a clinical lead pelvic health physio at Get You Better. And I've been a physio for about 15 years with over a decade working within the NHS. But I'm also a mother to 2 kids who are not so little anymore, and a woman in her 40s. So whilst I approach today as a healthcare professional with a good insight into helping patients and working in digital healthcare, I've also had to do the work and learn how best to support my changing body. So that's me. Now let's have a look at pelvic health. So I'd like to start by just saying 3 phrases that we're going to come back to throughout this short presentation. So number 1 is the pelvic floor, number 2, the whole body, and number 3, lifestyle, which includes mindset. So next slide, please. So before we just go into the action points, it's really useful sometimes to look at why women's health matters. And when we look at the incidence, we can see that pelvic health symptoms are common, but sort of almost as Joanna mentioned, what is really important to point out is that despite what you might hear as some societal jokes, they really should not be considered normal or something that you should just put up with. When we look at sort of healthcare in the UK, we sort of often see that women's health symptoms are often undertreated, meaning that women may not know how to recognise symptoms, why these should be addressed, where to seek help, or be brave enough to ask because of sort of the taboo that we have sometimes in society. But as a clinician, the treatment often, well, sometimes isn't always complicated, and often lifestyle factors and certain exercises are very effective in reducing or resolving symptoms. And for those that need more help, lifestyle factors and exercises still make up their treatment plan. So let's hold that thought and have a look at the pelvic floor, which is on the next slide, please. So I think before we can really talk about how we can be more aware of our pelvic health or tips that can help, we need to sort of find out where the pelvic floor is and what it is. So the pelvic floor is actually the collective name for about 14 different muscles that all work together and are really important for the body and the core system. And often healthcare professionals assume everyone knows where it is and what it does. But actually, I don't think this is the case. And I'll even let you into a secret that before having my own children and specialising in pelvic health, I didn't really know either. So let's find out where the pelvic floor actually sits in the body. So I'd like everybody on the call to sit up tall if you can. So you're going to have both feet flat on the floor and make yourself as tall as you possibly can. So you can either feel with your fingers, or you might just be able to feel that at this point here, now you're sat up tall, that you can feel that your pressure is on your sit bones, on your pelvis. So they are the central part, bony landmarks. If I have a pelvis at the front here, that's your front of your pelvis, the back of your pelvis, and then at the bottom, your 2 sit bones. Great. So now if everyone can just tilt their pelvis forward, you're going to hit a bony landmark, and that's going to be your pubic bone here. Great. Everyone back up nice and tall. I'm hoping you're all doing it because I can't see you. And then roll your pelvis back. So it's almost that slouch position. And you should almost be now touching onto that tailbone here. Okay, back up tall. So those 4 bony landmarks, so your pubic bone, your 2 sit bones, and your tailbone, are the attachment points for your pelvic floor. So it's a really quite a large area that your pelvic floor is located, and it will surround the clitoris, the urethra, the vagina, and the anus. And so just by default of where it is, we can see that it is involved in keeping bladder and bowel control. It's involved in sexual function, organ support, and then also core stability. But perhaps now that we know that's where the pelvic floor is, it's also important to take in mind that some other muscles around this area are important to build the complete picture. And these involve our bottom muscles, our inner thighs, our abdominals, and our back. And they help to build up the whole inner core. And by mentioning that, the reason being is that by doing often if someone's got pelvic floor exercises or you're trying to prevent them, by doing more additional specific whole body strengthening is also really helpful in terms of supporting the pelvic floor. So that would cover pelvic floor, it would cover whole body strengthening. Next slide, please. So perhaps one of the most overlooked things within pelvic health is lifestyle, because lifestyle, and it could just be a little tip, can sometimes really make the biggest difference in the symptoms that somebody's experiencing, whether it's urinary incontinence or prolapse symptoms, or an overactive bladder, for example. And so we're just going to run through some top tips for your bladder, your bowel, mental health, education and movement. So starting with bladder. Bladders really like to be able to fully fill up and then fully empty. And on average, you should be going to the toilet about 7 times a day or every 3 to 4 hours, and maybe perhaps overnight once overnight after a certain age. So it's advised that you should drink regularly throughout the day rather than in really large amounts, and amounting to sort of 1.5 to 2 litres a day. You can measure how hydrated you are by the colour of your urine, so it could really be like a pale straw colour. Now, people that often leak urine may try to reduce how much they drink, thinking that they won't leak as much. But actually, concentrated urine can irritate the bladder lining and worsen any urgency sensations. So by trying to keep hydrated throughout the day, you're going to have a much happier bladder. For some people, also certain foods and drinks can irritate the bladder. So this could be caffeine, citrus fruits, acidic food, or alcohol. But this isn't the case for everyone. However, if you are having symptoms where you're needing to rush to the loo or perhaps leaking just before you're getting there, then it can be really useful to just do a trial where you cut those irritants out for maybe a month and see if it affects your symptoms. If it doesn't, then you can just add them back in. Try not to go just in case, because this can lead to habitual patterns, which may then end up increasing your frequency. And as with many healthcare sort of conditions, reducing or stopping smoking is also beneficial because it can irritate the bladder. Next slide, please. So when we look at bowels, any pelvic health physio will talk about bowels quite passionately, because if you are, say, constipated or straining on the toilet, it can really affect symptoms such as prolapse symptoms, increased urinary leaks, as well as sort of an overactive bladder again. And so it's really important to try and establish sort of like a routine to be able to go regularly. And so being able to do a formed sausage-shaped poo daily without straining will go a really long way into helping your pelvic floor. So some of the main points with that would be following a healthy diet, including plenty of fibre. And several studies have shown 2 kiwi fruit a day can help to prevent constipation. Again, staying hydrated so that you're getting the right consistency. And many people find that actually opening your bowels is easier by placing your feet on a step. That could be either a step or 2 toilet rolls or a stack of books, whatever you've got handy to you. Anything that will really raise your knees slightly above your hips. And the reason for that is that it relaxes the muscle in your pelvic floor that loops around the rectum. And so it's much easier than to empty your bowels. And lastly, if you are finding it difficult, try not to strain, and instead try to really breathe out whilst you needing to go to the toilet. Some people even find, which I've always thought is quite funny, but it's all strange, but it can help if you need it. It's almost a humming sound, or even like a sound instead of any straining, because it really will reduce that pressure that's placed on the pelvic floor, and so reduce the risk of ending up with symptoms. Next slide, please. When we look at mental health, it's really, again, not necessarily thought of to do with pelvic health, but quite often if somebody is very anxious or worried about something, or really living in what we call that sympathetic nervous system, so that fight or flight nervous system, and not really coming down for that regular sort of delve into the parasympathetic, we often see that there's a lot of tension in their muscles. And this tension can quite easily then go into the pelvic floor, and it can reduce the flexibility or the movement and the efficiency that the pelvic floor can work with. And again, we can see an increase in prolapse symptoms, for example, or urinary leaks. And so addressing mental health is obviously important for your mind, but it's also equally important for your body. And I think really this is very individual. So obviously breathing exercises are sort of quite well known. Maybe yoga, and that could be like active yoga or yoga nidra, or simply socializing with friends, where you're going to maybe have a bit of laughter to really sort of help with your mental health and mind and body. Next slide, please. So obviously movement is important. If we're not moving or we're very sedentary, then we can feel stiff, our fascia can get tight, so that connective tissue in our bodies, and again, sort of limit the function of our pelvic floor and those supporting muscles. So this really includes everyday movement and exercise. And while some people who have pelvic floor conditions maybe can't do their favourite activity for a period of time while they've got symptoms, I think it's really important to focus on what they can do at that time. So it could be pelvic floor exercise. They could start whole body strengthening. So start slow and steadily increase over the weeks and months, and realise that it takes time for muscles to build. Walking, swimming, cycling are nice sort of variations of cardio activities, and really anything that brings you joy, because if you enjoy it, you're more likely to want to do it and carry it on. Next slide, please. So I think it's very useful as well to educate yourself about symptoms. For many people, learning that their symptoms can be controlled, managed, or resolved can be really revolutionary. And knowledge can be power when it comes to pelvic health. So obviously I've got to say, Get You Better. You can find out lots of exercises and educational tips within the Get You Better app, but also you can speak to your local healthcare professional. And like I just mentioned, it's really helpful to understand that pelvic health solutions often aren't quick fixes, frustratingly. It would be great just to have your magic wand and get it done in a day, but really they require small, consistent changes over several months, but it will definitely be worth it. It can be really helpful to keep a diary of your actions so that you can see what works and what doesn't for you, and how you're progressing over the weeks. Next slide, please. So the good news is that the Get You Better app is free for all people in South Yorkshire. You simply have to go to the App Store, download it, and then register. There's 3 pathways. If you click once more, then the 3 screens should slide down, maybe one more time. So we have a general pelvic health pathway, and then a pregnancy and afterbirth for the perinatal pelvic health pathways. So the general one is for women of all ages. It covers common symptoms such as prolapse, stress urinary incontinence, overactive bladder, and pelvic pain, as well as educational topics on menstruation and menopause. And then the perinatal one is really has got the different trimesters and recovery periods, so it's really helpful for people who want to prevent issues as well as those that maybe do have symptoms. Next slide, please. In addition to that, each pathway is supported by a pelvic floor trainer. So that means that you can work on strength and flexibility of these muscles to help to, again, prevent or improve any pelvic health symptoms. So if we go back to those 3 phases, you've got the pelvic floor. So you can learn how to create flexibility, coordination, and strength with the pelvic floor trainer. You've got whole body, so helping to create a robust core by following mobility and strength exercises. And lifestyle, follow the tips given in this talk or throughout the app if you choose to download it to optimize your well-being. And I think, again, it's really important. You don't have to do all of these at once, but by slowly building in the different aspects, then your pelvic floor will hopefully thank you for it. That's me.
Thank you very much, Niki. That's brilliant. And I know the app, if people have got issues, concerns, or just want to learn a little bit more, if they download the app and it'll go into the chat and the resources that we've got, we can share that and you can have a look at that. So if anybody thinks of any questions, pop in the chat and we can follow it up with Niki after. That's great. And Niki, thank you as ever. Great overview. There's a lot more complexity to it, but for the purposes of today, it was to just give an insight into the art of the possible and that people don't have to struggle on without asking for or sourcing some help for lots of things that we just put down to every day. So thank you very much, Niki. Really do appreciate your time.